Reawakening. Hi there, and welcome to the September episode of Reawakening, the Dream Interpretation and Life Coaching Podcast with Yvonne Ryba. I am your host, Chris Mann, and this month we go back into Yvonne's vault to hear a dream of hers from the 90s, which quite frankly reminds me of the old song, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. Well, it's been 35 years since that sitcom premiered, but about 20 years ago, Yvonne, who was a teacher in England, had a dream. In the dream, she was Mrs. Garrett-esque teacher at an all-girls school. One of the students in particular was giving her some problems. A little stubborn, a little antagonistic, kind of like Joe, if you ask me. Turns out, according to Yvonne, that all of these characters in her dream, and this is often the case in our dreams, represented different aspects of the dreamer. Do we all have a little bit of Mrs. Garrett, Joe, Tootie, Natalie, and Blair in us? God, I hope not. But if you want to hear more about Yvonne, check out her website, YvonneRyba.com. That's YvonneRyba.com. And now let's join Yvonne to hear one of her vintage dreams. Hi there, Yvonne. Long time no speak.
Well, I lost my voice. I had a terrible time, and now I'm hopefully recovered so that we can talk.
You got to have a little rest and recovery, but hopefully you had a chance to go back into your dream files and find a good one.
I did. And, it's a strange thing because it's not the one I was going to do.
Yeah.
But I'm saving that for another time. But this dream, when I looked at it, and I thought, I've forgotten about this dream. And it had a very significant effect upon me in my life. So I thought, I'm going to use this one.
Great.
It's called Teacher and Problem Girl. I gave it a name. I try to give them names and I know where they are.
Uh-huh.
And I had it on September the 4th, 1995.
Okay.
That's quite a while ago.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah. Background. I was living in St. George, Utah. Very beautiful place, with volcanic mountains around it. When you're coming through the Virgin River Gorge, in the distance you'll see the White Temple, the Mormon Temple, and then the city of St. George, and then around it, these red and purple mountains, which were old volcanic, mountains. And it's a beautiful place, really is. And it's hot as well. Anyway, we were living there. We lived there for 2 or 3 years altogether. But my husband was working there. So here's the dream that I had. Now remember, I was a teacher when I was in England. I was a high school teacher and I taught art and pottery. But I also taught English and lots of other subjects as well. So this dream, I was a teacher again in a school, a bit like the one that I taught in Manchester and also when I taught in County Durham. The one in Manchester was an all-girls school to begin with. And the one in Spennymoor had a similar art room. It was on the second floor. In fact, the one in County Durham was a very pretty place. The one in Manchester wasn't so pretty. Anyway, I was late for class. And it wasn't my fault that I was late, but somehow I was. And I went up to the room on the second floor and I thought, good, because this is an easy class to teach. Some classes are slow. However, there was a new girl in this class and she caused all the others to misbehave. She was stubborn and silent when I talked to her, and I even argued with her, but it made it impossible for me to teach the rest of the class because I was spending all my time trying to get this one to do what I wanted.
Right.
I went downstairs to the headmaster. Now, in the school in Manchester, in fact, in both those schools, the headmaster's office was, of course, downstairs. And I went in, and he reminded me of a headmaster I'd had many years ago, a very nice guy, by the way. And I said to him, I'm absolutely fed up trying to do this. I'm not getting anywhere with this girl, and I'm just sick of it. But then I thought, I'm not going to give in, so I went back upstairs. I'd gone downstairs just to complain and then went back up again.
Uh-huh.
So I returned to the class, and this girl somehow seemed more important to me than all the rest of the class. I had to make her listen and conform. I tried to put her out of the room at one point, but although I managed to get her out of the room, I knew that was not a big help because she was more trouble outside than she was when I could see her. So I brought her back inside and resolved to have a battle until I won. That's how I felt about it.
Uh-huh.
I could see that this was what she wanted. She wanted to have an argument and a fight with me. So then I decided to change my tactics. And I thought a good way to win this conflict would be for me to remove her from her chosen spot in the classroom. And I said, you and I are going down to the garden below. And I'm going to meditate there with you beside me. I'm going to gather my energy, and then by force of my will, you will learn. And that was the end of the dream.
Okay. I bet she liked that.
Yeah, well, it seemed like that was the answer, I came out of it, and then I wrote down, remember, nearly 20 years ago, I wrote down what I thought this dream was about. Now, it's always good to look back on things after a year or two because you see what happened to you in that time period. And I remember that we were having a bit of a difficult time in St. George. My husband was. I was enjoying it, but his life and mine were intertwined so much that if he wasn't doing well, neither was I. And his work wasn't going the way he wanted it to go, and we were having some problems. So this is what I wrote down for the meaning of this dream. Recognizing that the girl was part of me, or some quality or idea that I needed to pursue, that was my first thought. The class was good. Everything was well without her. In other words, I felt satisfied with most of my life and the progress I was making, but there was some part here that was just not going the way it should. The headmaster, I have the headmaster down here as a symbol for God. And I went downstairs to complain to God, really. But, listen, why am I getting all this crap here? I can't handle this. And then I got a sort of spurt of energy and thought, no, I can handle it. I'm going back up there to sort her out. So the answer came when I returned to the class. While I was trying to evict her, it made me realize that she was more important than all the rest of them who were behaving. For some reason, I had to really work on her. And so I said, let us go down to the garden, and I'm going to meditate. And through that meditation, willpower, and gathering energy, that would be the next thing I needed to overcome this very recalcitrant and difficult person, which really is a part of me. And she was bigger than all the other kids, so she is more important to me. I need to follow the advice that this dream gave me, and I figured that the garden was my subconscious, because when you go down into a thing, delving into the subconscious, that's why it's called subconscious.
Right.
That's the hidden part of us that we ignore a lot of the time, but in dreams, you can't ignore it because it's got the upper hand. And it will come through and give you all these symbolic messages, which is what dreams are. And that's where I was. I was getting this dream that said, okay, Yvonne, this part of you needs to be in a better place. Part of you is difficult. It's silent, aggressive, passive-aggressive, perhaps, or whatever it was that I was. And so you need to meditate. You need to do energy work. You need to really think about what you are doing. And this will help you. And by the sheer willpower, you will get through this into a better place. Well, I did. I did do that. Now, I was absolutely amazed that not long after this, and I didn't know much about energy work at this point. I'd heard about it, but, didn't get into it. Now, Reiki had just started to become mainstream.
And that's using the hands to transfer energy or to heal?
It's a healing modality where the healer, the Reiki master, doesn't have to touch the person. They just put their hands above the place where the pain is or whatever on the body. And you can use it for body healing and for mental healing and for lots of things. And I met somebody who was teaching Reiki. So I learned about it and I went and I did. You do it in stages. And I did what's called Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, which gives you a very good grounding in how Reiki works. And it's done in many ways. There's the healing hands, there's hands of light, there are different other names for the same kind of thing. It's all energy work from one person to another. And I had the most wonderful experiences with it. And I started to meditate more, but I used the scenery of St. George. St. George is very close to a place called, I think it's Snow Canyon, which was featured in one of the movies John Wayne was in, not one of the best he was in. It's when he was Genghis Khan or something like that. And they used that background to look like, Mongolia or something, because it was all volcanic and pretty rough, with some greenery there. And that was nearby, and you can see all these mountains. I mean, they're absolutely fabulous. So I would go out and take my neighbor's dog and walk it around a bit and look at the mountains and meditate. And I visualized abundance. And I did the Reiki and I got into all sorts of things. So this dream really was like, now wait a minute, there's a whole part of you here that's in rebellion. It's not paying attention to what it's supposed to be doing. And this is where you're supposed to be, so you have to do it. So I went into the garden, which is a beautiful place, of course. Gardens are always beautiful places of growth and beauty, and where we relax and enjoy ourselves. And here we are. I'm learning to meditate. And I did do a lot of meditating then. Every day I would sit and meditate for 20 minutes or so.
That's great.
And that was quite a lot for me, believe me. Some people can do it for hours, but I can't do that.
There was a part of you that was rebellious toward things going in your life, that you were being drawn to take it to a level of meditation and visualization and other healing work. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And see, in my life at that time, my whole focus was on helping my husband in his work.
Yes.
And I was neglecting part of me. And that part of me was kind of getting very aggravated that it couldn't get out there and do what it wanted to do. And actually, from that time on, and that's when I started doing dream interpretation outwardly. I mean, I used to do it for friends and family, but I actually did several interviews on the local TV in St. George. I met one of the interviewers and I talked to him about what I did, and I was just somewhere, I don't know, the dentist or whatever, and he said, "Oh my goodness, we'll do you on the show." And I did it like 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And then I did some stuff in the newspapers and interpreted dreams. And that's when I started to really get out there and do it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you paid attention to this dream that was leading you to do what you're doing. A lot of people don't realize that when they have a dream about other people, whether it's strangers or people they know, that those other people really often are just parts of yourself.
Yes.
Oh.
It's either quality. Now, it doesn't always have to be so. I know some psychologists believe every single thing in the dream is you, and in a way it's his, but sometimes other people do show up in your dreams as themselves, especially if you're dealing with somebody at that point, like your boss at work, your dad, your mom, or whatever, and they show up in the dream. Yeah, they can be represented by the same person.
Sure.
But a lot of the time, it's you. It's you, and of course it was me. I'm teaching. I'm in a class. Everybody's okay except there's one kid.
Right.
Who's bigger than the rest and is a pain in the neck. She was going to give me a heck of a time till I paid attention. And then I thought, right, I can't handle it in the normal way. I'm going to have to go down to the garden and learn how to do this stuff.
Fascinating as always, and it's cool to go back nearly 20 years and see where you were then and how your path was altered by paying attention to those messages.
Yes.
Well, Yvonne, it's always a pleasure, and we look forward to chatting again in October. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Take care now, Chris. Goodbye.
Reawakening with Chris Mann and Yvonne Ryba is a Rising Action Media production. Copyright 2014 by Chris Mann.